and kind of speak to your ability to think critically and are a true representation of you as a student, then feel free to submit them. If you feel like they're not, like I just mentioned, I was very candid about my own personal experience and being a terrible test taker, and just happy that Kenyon had a holistic review, because my testing was well below the middle 50th percentile of students who are admitted to Kenyon typically. I would not have submitted my test scores, because I felt like I was so much smarter, and I knew that my work ethic would compensate for those areas that I was lacking in terms of my academic preparation. I know I would be able to make up for it just by grinding and working hard, kind of having that Mamba mentality to be the best version of myself. And so that's what I would say. But it's going to vary depending on the different institutions. Jeffrey, Sherrard, I don't know what you would say.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to vary depending on the institution. I'll go back to, us at Tuskegee, having what we call standard admission versus test optional. So standard, of course, would be those students who feel as if their scores are a good representation of who they are and how they perform from a scholastic standpoint. And of course, test optional for those students who may not feel as if their test scores are a good representation. At Tuskegee, we took it a little bit, I'm not sure exactly how to say it, but we put a parameter on test optional. Students who had a grade point average of a 3.0 or higher would apply for test optional. And there were just a lot of things that went into that decision. But ultimately, for those who are really trying to decide which way to go, I'll say, speaking at Tuskegee first, okay, do you have a 3.0, right? And then from there, do you feel as if test scores are a good representation of yourself? And if they are, go test optional, go standard. If you don't believe that they're a good representation of yourself, and that you're able to, submit an essay, get a very strong letter of recommendation, go test optional. So I just really think it depends on understanding what test optional means for those institutions. As I mentioned earlier, it varies from institution to institution, but really having a good understanding of what it means for that particular institution to help with your, to help you make an informed decision.
To round that off, I was just going to say those are brilliant points that are made. I'd also say that whenever you're trying to figure out if you wish to submit your test scores, to do your research on the institution, or it's okay to ask questions prior to applying, because these are things that I see that a lot of students don't tend to do, or they tend to make some assumptions based off of past experiences with other people who went to college before them. However, feel free to ask as many questions as you need to understand what you're getting into. If you feel that providing your test scores makes you or shows a good scope of you as an individual, as a student who's gonna, readily apply to this institution, do so. But I'd say first, definitely just ask those kinds of questions. If you don't know how to ask those questions, I just say, speak to the admissions counselor who's presiding over that area prior to applying. And then they'll, a question that I like to ask students is there anything that you think you should be asking me, or is there anything that you want to know more of? So I tend to ask a bit more open-ended questions to get to know a student and what their main concerns about applying are first, in order for me to figure out what's the best fit for them, if it's going to be that case. But it's definitely just your choice, your option, and just ask questions prior. I definitely recommend that.
That's beautiful, Sherrard. I love that you said that. I think it's absolutely critical. I think there's a common misconception, especially for first-gen students like myself. I was kind of going through the process with no real guidance. I went to a large public school, only 2 college counselors for the entire class of almost 400 students, and the junior class as well. So that's just, over almost 800 students that these, who may be interested in college or not. Some were, some weren't, but But you all have amazing resources. I will say one in your college counselor with Ms. Rutsky here, but also, just like Sherrod said, reach out to your admission officer at different institutions, especially your top few institutions. It's not an inconvenience for us. It's our job, right? We're here. The reason why we're called admissions counselors, because we're here to also help counsel you in addition to your college counselor. We can give you advice. We can help you with the going through the process. And I always say, like, the way you interact with a school before, when you're applying is typically going to be a reflection of the way that you'll be interacting with the school when you're actually enrolled at that place, right? And so just keep that in mind when you're applying and looking to reach out to different admission offices as well. And so, yeah, I just wanted to add that piece, but I absolutely agree with Sherrod. Ask as many questions as you can. And at Kenyon, we even offer, like if you were to email me, I'll put you in touch with a current Kenyon student who you can set up a Zoom call with and speak about your, a specific academic interest or extracurricular interest, or, a talent that you have that you want to pursue potentially in higher ed. And so just keep that in mind as well.
I'm so glad you said the word talent, because that's the next thing on my mind. Let's go to the opposite end. Not opposite end, but sometimes testing and artistic talent don't always go together. Sometimes they do. But tell me a little bit about, does artistic talent play a role in your admissions process? And if so, how can students demonstrate their artistic talent to you?
I'll say at Tuskegee this year, we are meeting with our fine arts department to really beef that up a little bit more in our admissions process. Typically, again, those students were all lumped into one bucket with everyone else, right? But we've had some serious conversations with the fine arts department about this admission cycle and, having those students be able to submit some type of portfolio so that it can be evaluated in the admissions process. So currently at Tuskegee, we're having those conversations, but that will be some type of way in which the student can showcase their artistic talent, and that will be through a portfolio.
Just going to follow up and speak on that as well. At Columbia, we are predominantly in the creative arts. So a lot of our students are very talented, tremendous talent. And a lot of things that I see is, within our admissions process, our application process, we do have the portfolio that you're able to submit. And what that does is it can get you potentially a scholarship. So we have our faculty recognition award. However, I do review portfolios and I see all this tremendous talent, but I'm by no way I can call myself the most experienced at your talent or what you're doing. So what we do is we forward that on to our faculty for them to review, because they're the experts in that, So with that, they're able to, get that acknowledgement from industry professionals. At Columbia, we have, a lot of our instructors are still heavily involved within the arts, and they hold, employment in the arts still, besides just teaching. So the portfolio at Columbia is an option. If you wish to submit it, you can. If you don't wish to submit it, you don't have to. But I always recommend it for anybody who's looking out scholarship-wise. It's very rewarding for my faculty. So.
And then I'd like to just follow up. I already posted a few things. I've taken over the chat. And so feel free to click on some of those links if you want to check them out on your time. But I would just say the arts at Kenyon are alive and well, very strong. Not just our studio art in the fine arts department, but performing arts as well. Theater's huge at Kenyon. A cappella music in general is huge at Kenyon. And then but to the talent, we do have talent-based scholarships. We have general merit-based scholarships. Every student who applies to Kenyon is automatically enrolled in that. But we do have a truly meritorious program, so it is fairly competitive. Only about 25 to 30% of each incoming class will receive merit-based aid at Kenyon. And you have to be truly meritorious in our applicant pool. I put some more information about financial aid and scholarships as well. So the one thing I want you all to remember There are only about 80 institutions in the country that meet full demonstrated need, and we meet 100% of demonstrated need. And so in order to apply for financial aid at Kenyon, you have to fill out the FAFSA as well as the CSS profile. Both of those are required. And although the ticket, or the sticker price, I should say, is kind of alarming, at least it was for me. As my mom, a single mother with 4 boys on a bus driver salary. I remember at first I was not even considering Kenyon because it's like $70K a year to go here. Actually more than that now, but according to the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and this is because we meet 100% of demonstrated need, they did a comprehensive review on student loan debt across the country. And in Ohio, Kenyon students graduate with the least amount of student loan debt of any institution, public or private, any 4-year institution, I should say. And that's because of our commitment to need-based aid, as well as merit scholarships, as well as talent-based scholarships. And so with our talent-based scholarships, you can apply, you have to, those are the only things that require a supplemental essay. Aside from that, we just require the one on the Common App or the shorter questions on the Coalition app. We accept both of those. But there's a small 250 word limit as essay you submit with the talent-based scholarship in addition to your portfolio. And the faculty in those respective departments help us determine the finalists. And so music, writing, and studio art, those are the 3 areas in which you can apply for talent-based scholarships specifically. Those are $15 grand each year, so $60K over the 4 years at Kenyon. But there's no obligation that you're necessarily a major in those respective fields. For example, like with the music scholarship, you don't have to be a music major or minor. The only obligation that you do have to have as a music scholar is that you have to take either voice or instrumental lessons, which are free. They're provided for free. And you have to be in one ensemble of some sort. And then for the writing scholarship, once again, no requirement you're an English major or with a creative writing focus or anything like that. But it's expected that you would be writing for at least one of the, I think we have like 12 different literary magazines on campus, and the Kenyon Review is also housed, which is a world-renowned literary magazine and publishing company, housed right on campus, although a separate entity technically. And so it's expected that you would at least try to get your work published in one of those by the time you graduate. And then with the fine arts scholarship, it's very similar, no major or minor required, but you would have to have at least one type of exhibit that you kind of show in a gun gallery, which is a national renowned art gallery right on campus. So those are the talent-based scholarships. It does help in the admissions process as well if you're very talented at something. With the holistic review, Doc Locke, who's the director of our music department, might be looking for an oboe player that year because, one from just graduated the previous year, whatever it might be. If you have a really niche type of interest, that could potentially help you on any given year. Because we're such a small school, we're really looking that closely at each individual applicant. And so, there's on the Common App, there's 10 areas. Don't feel like you need to fill up all those, right? We just, where it's like, what do you do basically outside of school? And the activities that but we want to know how you spend your time outside of the school day. And that could be, babysitting a younger sibling. It could be taking care of a grandparent. It could be whatever it is, you have a second job. You play a sport, you play an instrument, you're whatever it is, that's important. Even if it's seemingly insignificant or, minute in your mind, or you're not sure if the college is interested in that. If that's how you spend your time outside the classroom, that's what we want to know about. And so, but if it's like a week-long thing that you did one time in your sophomore year of high school, that's probably something we don't want to know about, right? It's something that you're actually, devoted to, something you're passionate about. How are you spending your time outside the classroom? So think about it that way when you're filling out that activity thing with whatever it is you do extracurricularly.
That's something that came up this morning in one of our junior meetings. I had a student ask, basically, actually, I should say we had an admissions officer who said, if you only do one thing, we're going to, and there were 2 people applying for a scholarship, we're going to lean towards the student who, didn't just do theater, but did theater and community service. And I was holding my head going, no, I don't know. Tell us, because our student, we have no extracurricular activities except for those related to the specialty. How are you going to evaluate our students? Are you going to hold it against them?
I think I'll kind of get out of the way a little bit on this one because we don't typically have like a robust holistic approach. I think that may be more so for those who are like really strong on a holistic approach. We use that information for context, not necessarily from a scholarship standpoint, but from an admission standpoint. It just gives us an opportunity to learn more about the student, not that it would just penalize them from admissions or a scholarship standpoint, but it just gives us some more information about them.
I'll just stem off of that and say more is better, but it's definitely not something that is going to be a penalty. You know, community service is a great observation on my part. I look at that as, say, I have a student who, you know, is kind of teetering on the borderline for minimum requirements on GPA or something like that. I can look at that and say that the student has an excellent work history. You know, let me look at the student and, you know, ask more questions or whatever I need to do. But I wouldn't say that that alone necessarily rules out a student's evaluation from being able to attend.
So Kenyon, I kind of alluded to this with my last answer, the fact that, you know, we're not looking for you to fill up all 10 of those activities that are offered on the Common App. We definitely cherish depth more so than breadth. But although breadth is important, you know, in some cases, but at the same time, if there's a level of expertise that we see and is truly impressive, we would value that more than, you know, a mediocrity in a bunch of different things. And so, for example, there was a student from Mississippi who was a published author on a math on a math research paper that she had done in collaboration with one of the community college professors that she was taking dual enrollment courses with. And so already a published author, specifically as a female mathematician as well. I mean, those are things that we were like, whoa, this is impressive. I was talking about Judy Holdner earlier, Becky, who's one of our math professors at Kenyon. And we know that, you know, this is a student who would potentially come in, get involved with research right away as a first-year student and be published probably multiple times throughout their undergraduate experience at Kenyon, and would go on to do amazing things in graduate school as they get their master's or PhD or whatever, or whatever they choose to do post-Kenyon. So I would say that it's definitely, you would not be penalized if you only do one thing and do it very well. But it's also the job of the admission officer, the territory manager. So my job specifically for Alabama, to understand the context of the school, the fact that ASFA, you know, really cherishes that and really pushes students to challenge themselves in a specific area and to have expertise in it. And there, you all have a much longer school day than the average student, you know, especially across the country, but even in Alabama, you guys are, what is it, all the way to like 4:30 p.m. or whatever, what time you finish. And then you have extracurriculars and stuff on top of that. There's not a lot of free time, honestly, for you to be doing a robust number of things. And so, especially with the academic rigor that ASFA is renowned for. And so that's my job, to understand the context of the curriculum that's offered at your school, as well as the community and your individual context, so that I can say, well, yes, you know, they may only do one or two things, but they do them really well, and they literally don't have time physically. They're only 24 hours in a day, and people need to sleep. And also people need to be happy with their life. And so that's something that I would bring up in admission committee as I'm talking with about a specific student to the entire group, and give them an idea so that they can understand the contextual and the complexities and the nuance with each individual who's applying to Kenyon.
So speaking of being happy, I'm going to switch directions here. We've been talking about what you as admissions officers are looking for in students, but tell us what students should be looking for in colleges. How can they, a lot of these students viewing tonight are going to be juniors or maybe sophomores, maybe there's even a freshman in there, but younger students who are trying to figure out where they should apply, trying to make sense of colleges and going, they all sort of look alike when you get those brochures in the mail. How can they have a college search that's meaningful and find good matches for themselves?
I'll jump in on this just because this is one of my favorite things to talk about. And it's really, this is an individual question. This is an opportunity, like the college search process is an opportunity for you all as students to do a lot of introspection, to do a lot of self-reflection on who you are as an individual. What are you passionate about? Or what do you think you might be passionate about? Because you're going to change. Even if you think you know what you're going to major in right now, like there's a very few people will ultimately go and then major in and do exactly what they thought they wanted to do in high school in real life post, higher ed or post secondary school, whatever they choose to do. We joke at Kenyon, like the most popular majors, I changed my mind. And so it's very easy to change majors, very common as well. About 20% will double major. But the college search process, you want to know what type of learning environment you're going to thrive in, what type of social community and culture you're looking for out of that experience. And I also think it's important to understand the context of higher ed in general. In the United States, we are very privileged to have a wide variety of institutions of higher ed that you can choose from. There are over 4,000 higher educational institutions just in the US alone. And they're a wide variety. You have HBCUs, you have parochial schools, you have schools that are focused on occupation specifically, you have small liberal arts and sciences institutions, you have large state institutions, R1 like research institutions. And so understanding the context, so over 4,000 institutions in the US, only 225 of them are liberal arts and sciences colleges like a Kenyon. So we recognize we have a small portion of the pie, and so we're looking kind of it's a niche institution, and there's going to be the student who's willing to go off the beaten path, and we only would get maybe like 1 to 2 applicants a year from a place like ASFA or from even other schools in Alabama. But it's somebody who has done that reflection and is wanting to kind of understand the different colleges and what they're about. Sherrod was talking about asking the questions earlier as a prospective student. That's what you need to do. You need to figure out what the schools are about. You need to figure out what you're about. And then you want to find a place that has all the resources you need to pursue your passions to the furthest extent possible. But more importantly, I think you want to find a place where you can imagine yourself being genuinely happy for the next 4 years and ultimately for the rest of your life. I feel like your alma mater should be a place you're proud of, should be a place you're excited to go back for reunion weekend and meet up with your friends and then just ultimately kind of cherish that. And it's going to have a piece in your heart, for the rest of your life. And so that'd be my piece of advice.
Yeah, to add to that, I echo everything you mentioned, JJ. Just really, asking those questions, as Sherrod said, really to determine if it is indeed going to be a good fit for you. JJ mentioned those resources, right? I think it's important to know, okay, I'm coming in, I touched on it a little bit earlier. We don't only want students who can be admitted to the university, but we want students who are going to be admitted and they're going to be completers. So on the flip side, as a student, okay, what type of resources does the institution have that is going to allow me to not only be admitted? Well, the resources don't help you become admitted, but what resources are going to help me get through the institution, but also what type of career will I have once I, graduate? So I think all of those things that was mentioned and just putting emphasis on that will definitely bode you well with making sure that you find the right fit. And then also we talk about finding the right fit. I understand COVID is going on. Some institutions, if possible, take a campus tour, right? To really see what the environment is like on campus. Now it's somewhat of a maybe not as authentic environment just due to COVID and everything that may be going on, depending on how institutions have come back. But it does give you an opportunity to set foot on the premises, look at some of the buildings, speak with some of the students, some of the professors, if possible, just to really give you some more context. The same way that we're looking at context, in your essays, your transcripts, etc., your extracurriculars, to see if you are a good fit for us. I think that is an opportunity for you to come on the campus to get that additional context around everything that you may have heard from us through an email, or everything that you've heard from us on a panel discussion like tonight, or a phone call, having that opportunity to set foot on campus to get that additional context.
I'd say, just to speak further on that very briefly, when I speak with students, I ask them to think about the next chapter of their life, and then to think beyond that, right? Because ultimately, once you pass that finish line, you're beginning, that new stage of life after that. So I just definitely say, definitely come prepared with some great questions to ask, whether they're personable or not. Ask questions about campus life. Ask questions about student support organizations. Ask questions about what on-campus living is like, or how do you get acclimated to the area? The best places to eat around town. Things along the nature of that, because you're going to be spending a lot of time, right? So that definitely take that academic visit, take that campus tour if you can. I know that things were kind of hindered just due to the pandemic and whatnot, but definitely just explore your options. Talk to multiple schools. Don't just focus in on one. Talk to multiple schools. I'm telling you, because they're out here, and with that being said, whenever you are asking these questions, say things do shut back down. Ask if there's virtual tours. Like for Columbia, we set up virtual tours at the start of everything, just so we can have students still kind of digitally just get acclimated to our institution. So yeah, it just goes back to asking those STEM questions.
And I want to put a plug in for our resources. I just published a handbook for ASFA students and parents called The Next Step, Planning for Life After ASFA. And it's available on our website. It's a really comprehensive resource, although I'm going to be building it out. So if you see things that are missing, let me know. But it's a really good resource to help really walk you through the process of how college admissions searches should be done and how decisions are made and how you should do things like what teachers to ask for recommendations and how to ask for recommendations. It really is a step-by-step guide. So in addition to me being here to answer your questions or put you in touch with resources, we've got a guidebook for you to refer to. Do you have any tips, maybe, and we've talked about this along the way, but what are your favorite tips for students coming from lower income backgrounds or underrepresented minority backgrounds or first generation? It's near and dear to my heart. My mom was a bus driver too. And my dad was a telephone repairman. So I was a first generation college student. So what's your advice to students coming from some of those backgrounds?
Oh, sorry, Sherrod, I saw you unmuted yourself. I was going to say, go in on it. I'll keep this brief. I basically was just going to say, understand the world is a changing place. I think one of the things that I wish I would have known when I was applying is, and I was nervous about, applying to a selective institution like Kenyon, because as I've already candidly mentioned, I was below the normal academic standards. Understand that as a student of, so for me personally, as a student of color and a first generation to college student, there's so much that I could contribute to a community, and I'm wanted by so many different institutions. At Kenyon, at least, the diversity, but not just ethnic and racial diversity, yes, of course, but diversity in general, geographic diversity, socioeconomic diversity, political, religious diversity, diversity of thought in general. Diversity is the top institutional priority. And so if you can bring a diverse perspective to the community, you're somebody that we're going to want on campus, most likely. And so understanding your worth, understanding your value, and understanding that you know, there's times like I remember like literally applying to Kenyon was the first time in my life that growing up from a low income background was a good thing, because I qualified for such a large financial aid package and graduated without barely any debt whatsoever, you know, but yet received the exact same education as these people who were, you know, full pay families that didn't even apply for financial aid, you know. So there are families that are literally paying over 70 grand a year, but then there are people like myself that were only paying a few grand a year to get the same type of education and experience. And so understand that you would be valued, and that within at least at Kenyon, because of the holistic review, it is a feasible option. Don't think that it's out of your reach.
I was just going to speak on saying that I am also a first generation attendee. Well, I was for my family. And I like to speak on a lot of the programs that I use. So we had the Conway Achievement Project, which is our version of a TRIO program, in which, you know, we're able to provide mentors for first generation students, as well as have those mentors kind of set up building blocks for networking, as far as not only internal scholarships, but external scholarships, helping with those types of measures. So that's how I was able to, you know, financially fund myself ultimately through college, but also build some great relationships within that. I always tell students to come to school, whether they're going to our institution or any, just go with an open mind, and then also to be proactive once they're, you know, absorbing any of the information that they're receiving. But it goes a long way. And when I speak on coming with an open mind, get acquainted with our departments here at Columbia or at any institution. So reach out to Student Financial Services, reach out to our scholarships program department, reach out to these different types of entities that can help you ultimately get through your experience at any institution.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in real quick and brief and just say, you know, come being your true authentic self, and be okay with that. Be vulnerable, because, you know, as a student who may be first gen, low income, know that you're wanted. So be true to who you are. Come as your authentic self, and definitely, as the gentleman said, keep an open mind, and know that you're going to go there and you're going to make a change.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground, but I want to be respectful of time. And mostly I want to be respectful of our student and family's time and give them the opportunity to ask you the questions that are burning for them. So what I think the best thing to do is you can do one of two things. You can either write it in the chat if you'd like, and I'll read out questions, or you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
And I don't want to cut into their time either, but I just would be remiss if I didn't mention KEEP and STEM. So KEEP and STEM, these are our premier scholarships at Kenyon. These are loan forgiveness programs. So any KEEP and STEM scholar will graduate without any debt whatsoever, and in additional resources for like computers and books and et cetera. So in order to apply for KEEP, you have to identify as either first generation to college or a domestic student of color. And in order to apply for STEM, you have to meet a certain amount of demonstrated need through the FAFSA and the CSS profile. And it is expected that you will major in a natural science at Kenyon because it's partially funded through the National Science Foundation. So I just wanted to throw those two out there. There are about 24 KEEP scholars selected each year and about 12 STEM scholars selected each year.
I should have offered Sherrod or Jeffrey. Do you have any last words of wisdom or questions I didn't ask that I really should have before we move it to questions?
I was going to plug at Columbia, we do have a need-based scholarship called the Columbia Scholars Award. And then if you are in an ASN school or an art school network school, I believe that this institution does qualify for that.
We are.
So yeah, we have our Columbia Scholars Award, as well as our ASN award for anybody who's coming. They are need-based scholarships. So all you have to do is apply for FAFSA and you qualify for those scholarships.
Need-based scholarships at Tuskegee. We have the Stephen F. Feinberg Scholarship. who was a very generous donor last December, gave the university $5 million for scholarships for new students as well as continuing students. And these are for students who, for one, submit a FAFSA and they are Pell eligible. It's just that simple to receive that need-based scholarship. And then lastly, I'll say, if you're a student who's interested or up for a challenge, up for some academic rigor, definitely consider Tuskegee University. We'd be glad to assist you and walk you through the process and help you transform into the student that we know all students who go to college end up being once they leave an institution.
All right, so now ASFA students and parents, what questions do you have for these college admissions experts? Come on, don't be shy. If you're feeling shy, type it into the chat.
I feel like we covered a lot of ground, to be honest with you, but I understand.
Yeah. I guess while we're waiting for questions, I forgot to also mention that Kenyon is a PWI, a predominantly white institution. About a third of our student body do identify as non-white. And so, compared to many of our peer institutions, that's on par, if not better than some of them, but it's obviously also nothing like an HBCU in terms of our ethnic and racial diversity. And so those are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself, that introspection, like what you want out of your college experience. But there is a place, Jeffrey, I love you mentioned like bringing your authentic self to college. Like that just resonated with me so much, because I felt like when I went to Kenyon, it was the first time where I could truly be unapologetically myself, and not have to worry about what people thought of me, or like, if I was good enough, but like there are all these things that used to go through my mind, especially growing up around this area. But oh, great, Becky, we do have our first question, so I'll stop talking.
Awesome. Aliza would like to know, what are the key aspects to focus on when taking campus visits? And I'll ask in-person visits and maybe even virtual visits as well, since a lot of students can't travel or are hesitant to travel.
Yeah, I'll jump out and take a little stab. I believe I kind of mentioned this heavily in one of my responses. I would say one of the key aspects to focus on, when taking a campus tour is really getting an understanding. So let's approach in person. So at Tuskegee, we have student recruiters. So all of our campus tours are student-led. That is designed intentionally because we want those prospective students to hear the student perspective. So definitely take an opportunity to really understand what the experience is like as a student at Tuskegee or any campus that's given a student-led tour. I would also focus on, maybe getting some more in-depth knowledge around the academic program in which you're pursuing. Are there any study abroad opportunities? Are there any internship opportunities? Because as I mentioned before in the panel discussion, you want to make sure that there are resources available once you get to the institution that are going to help develop and cultivate you more as a person, but then also put you on a trajectory or a path for success once you graduate from the institution. I would say those would probably be the two biggest things, because you talk about student experience more so from a social life aspect, and then the academic piece, just to really figure out what that balance is there.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the student, forward-facing office. It's important. I help supervise the just over 100 students that work for us in our office, sophomores through seniors, and usually people who are in my similar role at other respective institutions are shocked when they hear that number. Even especially of a school of our size, only 1,900 students, and yet over 100 work for us in admissions. And one thing we always emphasize is that we're not trying to sell Kenyon to anyone. We recognize that it's not a perfect place, and it's a niche institution in a rural location with a emphasis on writing and all these other things that make us distinct. And so it's very few people who would actually be very, interested in coming to Kenyon, 100% residential, completely undergrad, et cetera. And so, but when you do visit, whether it's virtual or in person, which I'm actually going to post a link. This is our visit Kenyon page. You definitely want to come, as Sherard's already mentioned multiple times, to have the questions. You want to have a lot of questions, but then just like Jeffrey mentioned, specifically about the things you're interested in, right? You want to find out about the academic and the curricular offerings that they have, as well as the extracurricular offerings that are available. What types of clubs and organizations that may be available to you, or how easy is it to start your own club or organization if they don't already have that. You want to get a sense. Obviously, you're going to be spending a lot of time in the classroom. That's why you're going to college in the first place, is to kind of garner that academic and that. But also, I think outside of the classroom, it's important. If you can, eat in the dining hall, see what the food is like. I know at Kenyon, we have a meal plan. Every student's on the same meal plan. It's just like you walk in. There's also only one dining hall on campus. So it's definitely atypical compared to most places, but we don't have a student union. So the dining hall kind of acts like our student union. That's where everybody goes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You're going to see all your friends and eat there. So I think finding out the food, finding out the academic curricular offerings, and then finding out the extracurricular stuff, how you're going to spending your time outside of the classroom. Those are critical. And then just picturing yourself as a student there, right? Is that a place where you can really picture yourself being genuinely happy for the next 4 years, or however long it takes, for you to graduate? At Kenyon, it's typically going to be 4 years, but that's what I would say.
I'll just add on briefly, and then we can move on to the other questions. I feel like there are a couple more in the chat. At Columbia, we do have, besides campus visits, we do have what's called admitted student days, where we'll have students come on campus for the day, and they'll bring their family, and we'll have lunch, and they'll do academic visits, and it's within itself a tour, but it's more of a day in the life type of aspect, where you're able to see what the dorming is like. You're able to get a good insight on what the courtyards look like in our buildings, and what the classroom is like. We'll have some academic department reps on staff to just talk about each department. And like I said, it doesn't hurt to ask as many questions as you need to ask. And we do have our student ambassadors on site as well for our tours. So that's also another aspect that I feel like students should utilize. Take that time to ask those personal questions to the ambassador, because they're in your I don't know how to say it, but they're in your shoes, basically. They're in your shoes as they are doing and experiencing, living all of that right now. So it's best to just go and get some secondhand observation and kind of just do it.
Good advice. Maddie wants to know, do you have any advice for students who want to attend college out of state, but are concerned about the additional costs? Should this concern keep a student from applying? And when you answer, if you would, talk a little bit about net price calculators and some of the tools that students can use to begin to figure out what colleges might cost them and which ones might be more affordable to them than others.
Well, primarily I work with out-of-state students from the Southeastern region with incoming freshman students. So with that being said, I get a lot of these questions as far as, is there an additional cost? For me, at our school, there is no additional cost. In-state tuition and out-of-state tuition is one and the same at Columbia. The only, thing that is different is there could be some costs for on-campus living, but I'd say that I want to say at least 49 to 50% of students live on campus at Columbia. Like we'll have at least a good 2,000 to 3,000 students just staying in the dorms, even if they are from Illinois. So ways that I do that is we have what's called our award letter, which, you know, kind of breaks down all the costs of your scholarships included, as well as grant information and any additional tuition costs, kind of broken down on a piece of paper for you to see in a digital format, of course. But you'll know your estimated costs for out-of-pocket tuition coming before you actually do it. But I'll put in a couple of calculators in the chat, and you'll be able to see. We have a payment plan calculator and things of that nature as well. But yeah, I'll just wrap up with that.
Yeah, and actually, I just posted the Mind Tuition Calculator, which is it's a lot faster, less than 5 minutes. You can get a rough estimate of what you'd qualify for in need-based aid. And once again, we do meet 100% of that demonstrated need. So I would say no. And very similar to Columbia, there is no difference between the in-state or out-of-state cost of tuition, room and board, total cost of attendance, I should say. It's going to be the same no matter what. And like I said earlier, only 11% of the student body are even from Ohio. So the large majority of our students are coming from out of state and out of country. And so it definitely shouldn't be a deterrent. And also, I forgot to mention this when you were talking earlier, Becky, specifically about first gen and domestic students of color or just underrepresented students in general. We do have a travel grant. This past year, we just recently opened to visitors actually in person for the first time in over a year back in June, this past June. And so we're happy to have people on campus again, but we recognize how difficult it is to get to campus for some people. And so we do have a travel grant program in which students who are either first gen or domestic students of color can apply for the travel grant, and we will pay for your cost if you receive that, to not only your flights and the shuttle to and from campus, but your food while you're on campus, everything. And so we feel like that's absolutely critical to get a sense of whether or not Kenyon would be a great fit for you as an individual. And with that, with diversity being our top institutional priority, right there, we're just backing it up. We're basically putting our, the money where our mouth is. And then the net price calculator is a little bit longer to fill out. You're going to need a year prior of either a parent or guardian's tax information to fill that out. But because we meet 100% of demonstrated need, those calculators are very, very close to what your actual amount will be of need and merit-based aid that you receive. And so that's just something to keep in mind. I think it was Torin, you asked a question earlier about, if you don't qualify for need-based aid. I put a link in there for the talent and the merit-based scholarships, but I did mention earlier that we have a truly meritorious program at Kenyon. Only 25 to 30% of students who enroll at Kenyon will receive merit-based aid. And so we don't incentivize people to enroll at Kenyon by throwing merit-based aid at them. There are some of our parent institutions that will boast of 90% plus receiving merit-based scholarships. And some people consider that discounting, their total cost of attendance as opposed to actually it being truly meritorious. So I just wanted to clarify there. But definitely worth looking in, even out-of-state schools. I would highly suggest you look at in-state schools and out-of-state schools. You would be surprised at the amount of financial aid you might receive at some of these out-of-state schools. And so keep that in mind. They may be more affordable than some in-state schools even. Oh, and then quickly, I want to add, it's federally mandated that every institution in the country have a net price calculator. And so but the algorithm that we use as individual institutions is different. And so there is not an objective net price calculator algorithm. So every school in which you apply for or fill that out is going to give you a different amount in terms of what they show as your estimated family contribution and what you demonstrate in need. So just be aware of that and ask those questions about, what type of, do you meet full demonstrated need or not? And like, how does the financial aid work at each respective school that you're applying to, especially your top few choices?
Although we're in state, there's still the concern potentially for additional cost So definitely taking advantage of, the net price calculator to really see exactly, what you may have to contribute additionally. Obviously, there are not any airline tickets or things of that nature that you'd have to worry about with considering Tuskegee and you all being from the Birmingham area. But definitely, as the gentleman mentioned, the net price calculator is a very good tool to use, when calculating those additional costs.
Any other questions out there? Oh, okay. Aisha has a question. She wants to know, with standardized and test optional applicants, what's the best way for an applicant to positively stand out for a greater chance of acceptance?
I feel like this one is more directed toward Tuskegee. So I'm just going to, go ahead and take that. As I mentioned before, I think it really just starts with understanding what the test optional policy is, right? And I'm starting with test optional with us because, it's a 3.0 or higher. So for one, if you have a 3.0 or higher, then you could choose definitely between test optional or standard. If test optional is the route, you definitely want to make sure that you're able to display, or not display, but put forth a very good essay prompt. A very good essay and a very good strong letter of recommendation. We're going to take that into consideration a lot heavily. Also, as well as take a look at your high school transcript to look at, any AP courses that you may have taken to just really give us some more context. From the standard standpoint, it's a little bit more cut and dry. Grade point average and test score. But again, as we mentioned before, if you qualify for test optional and you feel as if the test scores that you have are not a good representation of who you are as a student, then definitely go that route, but definitely put a lot of stock into, or a lot of effort into your essay, and make sure that you're finding the best person to submit a good letter of recommendation on your behalf.
A lot of these students, a lot of the seniors right now are in the middle of writing essays through their English classes and also just thinking about college applications. Do you have any words of advice, general words of advice, what to do in essays, what to absolutely avoid? The worst thing you've ever seen in an essay, don't do it.
Well, for one, I said, research the institution. And if that institution has a specific prompt, make sure you're writing towards that prompt. I've seen students who it's obvious or apparent to me when reviewing a few files that, hey, this is the standard essay that they use for every single institution that they're applying for. So definitely take an opportunity to see if there is a specific prompt for each institution, because you want to, that's a part of the evaluation. That's something that we're looking at. Okay, did you read the prompt and did you write on the prompt? Also, definitely make sure it is free and clear of grammatical errors. I spent some time on the K through 12 side and assisted students with, submitting essays. So definitely want to make sure that it's free of grammatical errors. And then also making sure it's formatted appropriately, right? I've seen essays that are screenshots of the notes section from their iPhone device, right? Where they literally typed it in, screenshotted it, and sent it in. So definitely making sure that you're taking the time to format it appropriately, have it proofed, have it edited, and make sure you're writing on the prompt if there is a specific prompt.
So as the Writers College, this is a question we get a lot, is like, oh, how, people think that the essay is the absolute most important thing on your application. And I just want to be, at least at Kenyon, it is not. It's one of the many factors that we consider. But really, so the transcript, in the context of the school report that we have right side by side, is going to be the thing we spend the most time reviewing. But the essay is important. I just posted some advice from our dean, Diane Nancy, who's our vice president of enrollment at Kenyon. She gives a lot of advice to prospective students, and so feel free to click on that and check it out. But the essay should really be about something that you are, if not an expert in, something that you're very passionate about. This is not an opportunity for you to start writing about something that you think a college admission officer would be interested in reading. So don't choose your essay topic based off of, some existential like question or theoretical type of concept that you feel is very intriguing and going to be unique. It should really be something that well, or something that is critical to who you are as a person and a huge piece of your identity. This is an opportunity. Like, the best piece of advice that I've ever heard from anybody, and I tell students this now, is that if your best friend were to pick up a copy of your essay in the hallway without your name on it, would they be able to read it and know that you wrote it? That's something you should be thinking about. If they would have no idea that this is you, then it's probably not a good topic for you as an individual. And so, but that's just one piece of advice that I would give. Some people might say other things, but I do feel like it's an opportunity for you to it's just a supplement to the rest of your application, right? It should just be a reflection of who you are, or giving a piece. It's an opportunity for you to divulge more information about yourself. I think, Jeffrey, you were talking earlier about how you read the essay about an individual, the legacy, who had all the land and the acreage, and you would have never known that about this person otherwise, had they not written about it in their essay. So this is just another opportunity for you to share information about yourself that otherwise may not show up on the application itself, or is just complementary to the rest of your application.
And to speak to that, I was just going to say, whenever you're writing, definitely write about something that you care about. That's what I tend to like to see a lot of students lean towards. And whenever you're writing about that, be clear and concise about it. And with that being said, grammatical errors, those are things that I can be lenient towards, because with the Common App, which is a popular resource for students to apply, Columbia has, sometimes the format can get messed up. So I tend to read, as long as it's clear and concise, and points are conveyed, and the ideas are clear. That's what I'm looking at. It doesn't have to be specifically professional, but as long as it's clear and understanding, I think that's good writing.
Okay, last call on questions. I do want to mention the Common Application that Sherrard mentioned. The Common Application is an application that over, I think, around 800 different colleges around the country currently accept. It may be higher at this point. So you can fill out one application and send it to literally hundreds of different colleges. You don't want to apply to hundreds of colleges, but lots of different colleges accept it as if it were their own. So it can be a time saver for you. And I should ask, Jeffrey Pierce, do you guys accept the Black Common Application? Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, so we are members of the Common Application as well as the Common Black College Application. So the Common Black College Application is for students who are interested in, very similar to the Common App, you can apply to multiple HBCUs at once. So we're part of both of those. Whichever your preference, we'll still receive your application. We also have our in-house application, which is the Tuskegee University application. And that lives directly on our website. It brings you directly into our student database system to where you can begin interacting with us immediately in real time. But however you would like to apply, you could do Common App, Common Black App, or visit our website to apply to our in-house application. Neither app gets special treatment in the evaluation process. Just want to mention that. So really it's totally up to you all as far as which application you choose to submit.
All right, great. I went ahead and put my information in there in case students or families have questions. You can reach me. I do want to thank our panelists for taking the time out of their evenings tonight to share their wisdom with us. We really appreciate it. And I hope that some of you have visited before, but I hope that you have an opportunity to come back down and see us again at ASVA or up from Tuskegee, as the case may be.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. We were excited to be a part of the conversation.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Becky. And good luck with the school year, everybody. Super excited about this school year and the admission cycle in general. And so good luck with your college search process.
Stay safe, everyone. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.